Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Treehouse, a podcast series brought to you by Storied, where I chat with people that have a passion for genealogy, storytelling, or both. I'm your host, Heather Haunert, and today I am very excited to get to chat with our guest, Ellen Thompson-Jennings. She is the Family History Hound. I love in Ellen's bio, it says, "My life revolves around three main passions: genealogy, genetic genealogy, and preserving my family history." I feel like it absorbs our whole life, doesn't it, Ellen? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather, for having me.
Super excited.
I'm really, that's what it's all about. It's like, I always say, if I'm awake, I'm doing genealogy. So yeah,
Yes.
so all aspects.
Well, and that's what I love about it. It's a hobby that is just, it never ends. You can just keep going and going and going. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's fun. Well, Ellen, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background, how you got started in family history and storytelling with family history.
So I got started in genealogy when I was about 20 years old, which was quite a while ago. Anyways, I watched Roots like many people did, and I read some books about genealogy. So I interviewed my great grandmother and
Yeah.
asked her a bunch of questions that I found in a book. And I wrote those answers down. And I have a box where I put them in the box because I did do genealogy then, but it was snail mail and all that stuff. And then I had children and I was too busy and put it aside. But then when my children were grown, then I decided I had the time. And
Yeah.
as far as storytelling, my brothers and I were raised on stories around the kitchen table at dinner. We heard all the stories about the family. So
Yeah. I love that you thought to interview your great grandmother. I mean, that is such a treasure to have those questions answered for you to
I
have.
always encourage people to interview that oldest person. My problem is that I interviewed my great grandmother on my dad's side, but it was my grandmother on my mother's side, and I don't know why I didn't interview her, but she knew answers to one of the mysteries that I deal with in my
Oh,
genealogy. So if I would have asked her, I wouldn't have had the struggle that I have now trying to
yes.
figure out
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that we're all in that boat for sure. Um, why do you think, Ellen, that storytelling is such an important aspect of family history? We talk about the dates, we talk about the names, but why is storytelling such an important piece?
I don't know. I just feel it helps you feel connected to your people. Um, you know, I don't know. My parents talked about their grandparents and their parents and growing up, and I think that if you tell your stories, then your children are going to feel the same, and they know the stories. So, in fact, when my dad was still alive, I actually bugged him so that I could get him to. Uh, he always told so many stories. I said to him, you need to record them. So he
Yeah.
recorded the stories, and I have them, and I have them on a site, and
Yeah.
so that other people can listen to his stories.
Yeah.
I've actually made books with QR codes, so you can actually
Yeah.
scan the QR code and listen to him tell the stories that he used to tell us.
Yeah, yeah. I love having that double aspect. I know a couple of my team members at Story to have that same thing, that they have their written version of the story and then they have the audio file of, their family member telling the story too. I think that's so powerful to have that
Yeah,
uh, as an
yeah.
aspect. Do you have, Ellen, a certain I guess, formula or way you go about writing a story? Is there kind of a process you go through, or you just wing it?
I just wing it.
Yeah.
I always say I'm kind of fly by the seat of my pants. Um, if I think of a story, I make sure that I write it down because, there's so many things that sometimes float around in your head when you're driving in the car. And so
Yeah.
if you get a chance, write down, because you might not be able to do it right then, but you want to get back to it later. So I keep a log of the stories that I want to write up. And then basically I just wing it, like you said.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think too that when I write it down, I tend, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but when I write it down, it tends to make me think of other things, like maybe something else that goes along with the story or another story even, but that writing it down is important to capture
Yeah.
that and come back a different day,
Yeah.
because you might think of something, one day and then you have something totally different.
I think too is if you have other people that might be able to add to the story, maybe
Yeah,
ask them, well, what do you remember about that story? Maybe you remember something different. I know that when I talked to my dad and his brother, they remembered different things
sure.
because of what was important to them, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah, I love having that different perspective because everybody's version of the story is always different. So I think that's
right,
important.
right.
Do you have any resources or tools that you recommend for people? We have a lot of people with story that are new to family history, totally new. So do you have any suggestions for resources or tools if they're going to start researching or writing their family history?
Well, for me, when I started my blog, um, Hound on the Hunt, one of the things that I really found useful was Grammarly,
Mm,
uh, just for writing to make sure that you're using proper spelling and proper grammar.
yeah.
I actually had somebody comments on I think she was a teacher, and she said, I like your blog, but so then I decided, oh, I need to get this tool. So I use Grammarly all the time. And then now with AI, I think
Yeah.
that it can help you so much. Not, it might put your words, maybe if you want to use it that way, but you could also use it just for background information. So if you're
Sure.
telling the story of an ancestor in a specific location, maybe you want to ask AI,
Yeah.
what would it have been like to live in Kingston, Ontario in 1880?
Yeah.
Just to get some background information
Yeah.
and tools like that. And also on some of the sites like Ancestry and My Heritage, they do have AI tools that can help you,
Yeah.
using, what they have on their site.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know that we have we have Story Assist where people can just put in details, and then it spits something out for them. And I think it is important. You said it's, in my mind, it's kind of that rough draft.
Yeah.
Here's the kind of gist of what you're wanting, and then you can change it to.
Yeah, I mean, I would create a framework of what
Yeah.
you'd like to make sure that you cover so that you cover all the details that you think are important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You made me chuckle. I used to be a teacher, an English teacher. So I try not to be that person. I tell people to just write it, but sometimes though I do write and like purposely, I shouldn't say purposely, but like misspell things, or if somebody has written something that's an ancestor that was misspelled, I try to keep it because,
Yeah,
I think that's important to the integrity of the story. So
right,
I do
exactly.
that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Do you have, this is my favorite part. I love to be able to ask people, do you have a favorite family history story that is just one that you always like to share with people?
Actually, I was telling you I have two.
Yeah,
So
love it.
one of them is my dad. One of the things he talked about at the dinner table was going to school and having to walk to school. And we used to, bug him and say, "Oh yeah, you walked 5 miles uphill both ways and all that sort of stuff." So a long time ago, and I can't remember how many years ago, I decided to have an event for all of our family, so my cousins and everyone, and we called it Walk the Talk. So we went to the family farm and then we walked to where the school was. The school's not there anymore, but there is a sign, and we walked the talk. So
I love that.
so so all of us did that. And I mean, it was funny because my dad's saying, well, it used to be more hilly. They cut down the hill. So like, I mean, we still weren't walking the talk completely. So, and then when my dad passed away, it was during COVID. And so we did a memorial walk, and we called my son and his cousin set it up, and they called it Hoofing It for Harv. And so we
Aw,
walked the talk again. And it was just an enjoyable way to be out in the country. And we went to the old farm site, and the only thing that they had there was the barn and that's left.
yeah,
So that's my one story. And
love
my dad
that.
told that one all the time. And then the other story was a story I never knew. Nobody knew that. And so one time I went to the archives, and I was looking at some files, and there was one called the Returning Soldiers file. And so I thought I'd look, and sure enough, there was my great grandmother's name was in it. And I couldn't figure out why. And so when I called up the file, I found out that she had sent a letter asking that her husband come back from World War I because they had been in a train accident. And I go, I didn't know anything about that. So then I'm at the archives, so they have the newspapers. So I was
Yeah.
able to search, and I found that they had been in this horrific train accident. And I can't remember, there was quite a few people that died.
Oh,
And it was called it was a special train. It was called the Moonlight Express, and it was going to Alberta Beach. And anyways, so nobody knew that story. So now that's a story that I can uh, sort of bring back to life. And
yes.
in fact, one of my great aunts actually got her payout from the train from the
Accident.
train
Yeah.
company, and it was $464, and she received it like, oh, I don't know, it was quite a few years later. I'm trying to it happened in 1917, and it wasn't until she was 21, and she was just a little girl when
Mhm.
it happened. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a story that had sort of got lost, and so
Wow.
that's the story I can tell now, right?
Yeah. Incredible, incredible story. And I love that you can tie, the newspaper and being able to find that story of when that happened in the newspaper is just that's incredible. I love that you said, bringing it back to life because I do think about that a lot. I do my own family, but I do things for other people too. Sometimes not even for other people, just for myself. And it's somebody that's, not even related. And I always think that, it's just a way to kind of, bring people back to life that have been forgotten about for, decades.
I mean, oh, so then I think of another story. So I work at a farmer's market, and
Oh,
so last fall I met a lady, and I was like, I'm all about preserving your photos. So I
yeah.
was showing all of my photos, and she said, I don't have any photos of my dad, but my mom died when I was a couple months old. My aunt and uncle raised me. My parents weren't married, so my dad just disappeared.
Mhm.
And uh, anyways, so I said to her, well, let me know what you know about your father. And so she only knew his name, and she only knew that he was 23 when she was born. And
Okay.
she was born in 1943, I think it was, or
Mhm.
45.
Mhm.
Anyways, so a week later, I was able to show her pictures of her father. I was able to show her pictures of her grandparents. I was over pictures of her great grandparents. And I also told her, you have three half siblings, and one of them knows about you. And because you're in her tree on Ancestry. And I
Wow.
know. And so she didn't, like, this lady is in her 80s.
Mhm.
And so she doesn't have any computer skills. So I said, do you want me to contact her? And she said, yeah, that would be great. So I contacted her. And so this lady lives in Portland, and we live in Alberta, but
Mhm.
that's where this lady, my friend's father had moved. And she knew about her half sibling only because her uncle had told her on the day of her dad's funeral.
Mhm.
He said, you need to know this, but
Yeah.
she didn't know how to find her.
Yeah.
So over the winter, they chatted the whole time. And then this spring, they both came. Sue came from Portland
Mhm.
and met her half sibling Doreen. and they came to farmers market. So I was able to meet them. So, I mean, I like other people's stories too. And
Yes.
yeah,
That just makes my heart so happy that you did that for her. That is amazing. That
yeah,
great
thank you.
story. Like
Yeah,
that ranks up there. That might be my favorite one I've heard. That was a good one. Oh, well, Ellen, as we wrap up here, do you have any tips or tricks or pieces of advice, wisdom that you would like to leave with our audience today?
I think just, be genuine and tell the story from your heart. So just sit down and write it, or if you don't feel like you can write it, then tell it into your phone. You have us,
Oh,
most of us have smartphones, so
yeah,
record it,
yeah,
or record the audio and the video. And just write the stories, because otherwise those stories are going to be lost, and
yeah,
your grandchildren will appreciate if you tell the stories of yourself, your life. I have a thing called, um, you know, uh, the story of you, the star, on my store,
yeah,
and it's all writing prompts to help you tell your story.
yeah, yeah. And I will definitely link that in the author bio I have on the page for you. That's a great
Yeah,
tip. And I think too, I love that you said to, if you don't feel like writing it, because a lot of people don't. I mean, they feel intimidated by that, I think.
yeah.
So I love the idea, just record it. We do have our devices that make it super easy for people to just talk into
I
it.
mean,
And
with my dad, with all his audio recordings, what
yeah.
I did was I created a book,
Oh,
and for all of the stories, I put photographs that related to that part of his story, and then
yeah,
I put the QR code of his recording. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, there's lots of ways you can present it,
yeah,
especially to the younger generation,
sure.
that might be more appealing than just, here's a bunch of, facts,
Right.
and, so.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for your expertise in our field and just your passion, because that comes through in just having a chat with you. So I am very honored that you spent time with me today. Thank you.
And thank you. I really appreciate you asking me to talk to you.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Well, until next time, friends, embrace the power of your family's untold tales and embark on a journey of discovery. Let the ink flow and the words dance as you weave together the threads of your ancestors' lives. Start writing your family stories today and let their voices echo through the generations to come at storied.com. Have a great day, everyone. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Family Treehouse, where we celebrate the power of storytelling and preserving our family legacies. Storied is more than just a platform for sharing stories. Dive into those historical records and newspapers, discovering the hidden gems that bring your ancestors to life. Add branches to your family tree, connecting the dots between generations. Thank you for joining us on this storytelling journey. Your stories matter, and through Storied, they have the power to resonate across time and touch the hearts of generations to come. Keep uncovering your family's history and keep the spirit of storytelling alive with Storied.